Eric, I want to really thank you for taking the time to come here this morning to be a part of this podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I've been knowing you for how long now?
Gosh, so you started teaching
when
Marissa when she was, I think, 3 years old. So that'd be 9 years. No, 10 years.
10 years.
We've known each other for 10 years.
It's been a long time. And all those talks outside the gym.
Oh, you know, and I mean, always good talks. Always good talks.
Because you're in tech, and that's something I like.
Yeah.
You're always doing something different and going over different places in Asia, trying to get stuff started. I love that.
Well, you know what I mean? 10 years, a lot's changed in 10 years.
Hasn't it?
Yeah.
It really has. Tell me, where were you born?
I was born in San Francisco.
Okay.
Is it when or what? Or where?
Where?
Where, yeah. So San Francisco Children's Hospital, grew up, born and raised San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay. Do you have siblings?
My sister is still there. She lives with her husband and 3 children up in Santa Rosa, which is just north of San Francisco.
How many years difference between you?
2 years. 2
years. Are you guys close?
Very close.
How about your parents? How are they doing?
So both my parents passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Back about 10 years ago now.
Okay.
And they both passed away within about a year of each other.
And they stayed married the whole time?
No, I'm a child of a divorced family, and
most people in California, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of
people in California come from divorced families.
I do too. Yeah.
My father remarried, and my stepmom is still alive, and she lives close to where my sister is.
Did you know her well?
Oh, I mean, she raised me.
Wait. Okay, so what happened how old were you when your mom and dad?
When I was in elementary school, my parents split up, and then I decided, for a variety of reasons, that I wanted to go live with my dad rather than my mom. And my dad had been dating a very nice woman, and she graciously said, "Yeah, let's have Eric and my sister Jen come and live with us."
He took both of his kids.
Yeah. And so we went and lived with my dad and my stepmom, and she raised us from the time I was probably 10 years old until, until today, because she's still giving me advice.
Is that right? So what about your mom? What happened with her?
It's a sensitive subject.
Okay,
but,
well, we don't have to go there.
It's not something that I hide, but my mom had a drinking problem.
Okay. And
it was one of the reasons that my parents split up.
Okay.
And my mom stayed single after the breakup, and she was a real estate agent her entire career, but she had an issue that she wasn't willing to address, and it affected her health.
But you said they died within months of each other.
Yeah.
Well, they stayed close. They were friends.
No. It just happened that my father had a medical condition that had been undiagnosed for a while, and because of that, he died much earlier than expected. My mom, as I said, she had not taken good care of her health, and the doctors had basically told her, hey, Mrs. Hamilton, if you will just take a walk every day, you could probably live another 20, 30 years.
She wouldn't. And
it was, for whatever reason, it was just too hard for her. She decided that was not something she was willing to do. And it definitely affected her, her lifespan. Of course, my sister and I look at it and we're like, okay, we're not going down that path.
Were you close with your mom at all?
It was a challenging relationship, but of course, I loved her dearly. She was my mom, despite all of her flaws. But when you have somebody who is not willing to acknowledge a challenge in their life, you have to put up certain limitations, and so that was always a challenge for me because she was my mom, but I wasn't really able to fully embrace that just because of those challenges on her side.
So your stepmom was really a good mother for you.
Yeah.
She didn't have kids of her own?
No, did not have any children. She had been a single woman, never married when she met my dad, and said, yeah, I'll take on 2 bratty kids in.
They don't belong to me biologically.
Yeah. And I'll just do that.
That is beautiful.
And
well, cheers out to her. I mean, that's beautiful. I hope she sees this. Make sure she does.
Yeah, well,
that's wonderful.
As in all parent and children relationships, you have conflict, you have disagreement, you have all of that. But she is one of the foundational reasons for who I am today.
Mm.
And I tell her that anytime that I can.
Is your sister just as close to her?
She's pretty close. I mean, like I said, they live near each other.
Okay.
I think their relationship is more of small doses, especially as my sister got older and more independent.
Mm-hmm.
And our stepmom, was very direct and open with advice. And I think sometimes my sister chafed at that. Didn't really want to hear. Well, you really should be doing this. So they keep in touch on a regular basis. But I think small doses is probably the best way to put it.
Does your sister have children?
Yeah, she has 3.
They're older though.
Yeah, so the youngest
Are they
one...
Marissa's age?
The youngest one is 10 days older than Marissa.
Okay.
Which just happened by coincidence. We had Marissa right at the same time as they had Max. And then 2 older girls. One who is, I think Ellie is 19 or 20 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then Violet is, I think, last year of high school. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it just...
it goes 17.
I think she's about 17. It's just, everything goes so fast.
You remember them when they were just babies, huh?
Literally. I mean, I remember holding them in one arm. Right. Yeah.
So do you get to see your sister often?
Yeah,
well, FaceTime.
With COVID, it's been a real challenge. But previously, I would bring Marissa for a week to 2 weeks to California. We'd stay with my sister every year.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, really special time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you live overseas for as long as I have, as long as you have, seeing family back, from your home country, wherever that may be, is important. Mm-hmm. And FaceTime's good, but it's not everything.
That's right. How long have you lived in Japan?
So off and on.
Was it only Japan?
So no, I've lived in Japan off and off since right after college.
Okay.
So I lived here, moved here almost a couple months after I graduated from university. Mm-hmm. Lived here for several years. Went back to the States. Then came out with Apple on an expat assignment. Was here with Apple for about 5 years. Started my own company.
What year was it? What year did you come out here first?
First I came out in 1993.
1993. Yeah. And that's straight out of college.
Straight out of college. Why? It's a really good question. And I don't have a logical answer. But I knew when I started studying Japanese in university that I couldn't just skim the surface on this. I had to dive deep. I had to learn about this culture. And it wasn't just Japanese culture. It was more, I'd always had a general curiosity about Asia. The way I describe it to people in a real simple way is, I grew up in a state in the United States that has an incredibly diverse and widespread society, but it is very shallow. California itself has less than 150 years of history. And even if you go back to the Native Americans,
it doesn't matter.
You just don't have that depth.
Mm-hmm.
And I come to Japan, and I have friends whose families go back 1,000 years,
right.
And they actually have the documents to prove it.
Right.
And you're like, that's amazing. And what is that? What's the difference? And what does that mean from a society perspective? And I was just very curious. And you could see it when I was studying Japanese. I could see it in the language. I could see it in the writing. I could see it in, and then of course, you look at kanji, and you're like, well, that's not even Japanese. That goes all the way back to China, and
right,
4,000 or 5,000.
They chopped it all up, made it into blocks.
And that was fascinating to me, and I wanted to learn more.
What made you decide to study Japanese? First, what college did you go to? What college?
I went to UC Davis.
UC Davis, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to study Japanese? You said you don't know why you came to Japan, but what made you decide to study Japanese?
So again, a fortunate coincidence. I was an English major. I was planning on getting my degree in English and then probably going off and either do a law degree or some master or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about doing.
How many years did you stay in college?
I was here 4 years. 4 years.
And would you graduate with?
Degree in Japanese.
What?
So started off with English. Had a general tech background, so I dabbled with maybe going into computer science or a hard science degree, but realized that I'm just not cut out for 12 hours of debugging code in a basement. That's just not me. Still love tech, and of course I've been in tech my entire life, but had to take a language requirement for my English degree.
Okay.
And I had studied Spanish for 6 years, and I was so tired of it that I would do anything.
To get something else in there.
And I was looking through the course catalog, and I saw Japanese, and I thought, this is really interesting. I'd love to try this.
Japanese.
It was the hardest class I had ever been in.
You did really well in school.
I struggled.
But you did well in school, basically.
I did well in school, but Japanese was so hard because it was so fundamentally the way you think is different.
It's different, right?
And I talked to my teacher about it about 2/3 of the way through the class, and I had a one-on-one with him. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And that's, when you've done well in school your entire career, that's a hard thing to admit. But she just said, look, you're taking 3 English-related classes and 1 Japanese class right now. Languages take focus. Why don't you just see, if Japanese is cut out for you, why don't you try and take mainly Japanese courses next quarter and see how well you do? So I did that. I took a culture class, a history class, and a Japanese language class, and I did great. And you kind of got over that hurdle of, there's the hiragana, the katakana, and you start getting into kanji, and connections start being made in your brain. And you're like, wait a minute, okay, so this is why you say it this way. And the verb always goes at the end. And so this is what a particle means. And when you start understanding it, then it's scratching the surface and then realizing this is a Chinese character that means mountain. But there's a history behind that goes back how many hundreds of thousands of years. I've never experienced that before. This is something that I could study for the rest of my life, and I'd never get bored.
You'd never get bored. You'd always have something to look at.
And I've always been the type of person that I would rather have a complex, challenging problem than something easy that I can just kind of check the box.
Right. But as long as you can solve that problem.
Well,
and it's all been solved already. It's just a matter of you learning it.
Yeah. And there was a point of creating your own connections within that and how that associates with your life and the things that you care about.
But don't they say that usually you have to identify with a society or a group to learn their language well? Now you've got bluish gray eyes. Am I right?
Yep. Bluish gray eyes. Yeah.
Blonde hair.
Yeah.
How in the world do you relate? Excuse me. How do you relate to being Japanese?
I don't. It's not about that for me.
Okay. Now, what is it about? Just that challenge.
And I think everyone who's non-Japanese or non-Asian that comes, actually non-Japanese, that comes to Japan and stays here for a long time, eventually realizes, and a good friend of mine's father who'd been here for over 50 years when I first got here related this to me within the first couple of weeks that I arrived. He had been here since World War II. And ran his own business, was a very successful businessman in Yokohama. And he said, I've been here almost my entire life, and I got into the taxi this morning, and the taxi driver complimented me on my Japanese, and I got upset because I told him, young man, I've been in this country, I've been speaking Japanese longer than you've been alive. And he said, but I know that there is an invisible, not wall, but there is an invisible separation, Japanese and non-Japanese, in this country. And it's, we come from the United States where those kinds of divisions have led to bloody riots and police discrimination and it's been very real in our face for the entire history of our country.
That's right.
Not so much in Japan. Not so much in Japan. We can look historically at comfort women and things that happened in World War II. We can look at general discrimination that has happened here, but we don't hear about a person being pulled over and beaten on the side of the street.
No.
Right?
Not anymore.
Well, actually, that's true. I mean,
see, the thing is, don't forget, Japan's history is really long. It's over 3,000 years, right? They had over 200 years of isolation.
Yeah.
Basically, it wasn't total isolation because they had people coming from Norway and stuff coming in.
But it was controlled contact.
Of course.
Yes, and controlled messaging.
But all the people in Japan, of all the Asian groups, I would say, they look the most diverse. But yet, they've convinced everyone that they're the same.
It's amazing.
Isn't that something? See what I'm saying?
And when you study this, you understand that it is a deliberate cultural decision that started from the village, built out in larger societies, and has successfully encompassed the entire country, of a sense of myself is less important than my group.
Right, right.
And my group is defined not by a single group, but it's defined by my circumstance.
Now, if you'd watched the podcast I have, and I suggest people do, there's a person I had on. His name is Gregory Clark.
Okay.
And he's been here for a long time. He's an Australian.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a book because people ask, what is Japan? What is it? And he calls it a tribe.
Yeah, it's very
You don't
true.
steal in a tribe.
Right. You
don't do things wrong to people if you belong to a tribe. And he wrote this book, and it is so on point. When I was trying to, when I moved back to the States for the first time after I'd been here for a while, I was trying to explain to people the difference between the United States and Japan. I used a metaphor of the United States is a country designed with laws that come from heaven. They come from the government. They come from on high. And the rules come down very clear, and they're rigid. They're a law. And you can be able to look at that point that comes down and be able to measure that as where you are and what you can do. Japan is a society that is accreted from the base, where historically there have been unspoken rules. There have been customs. And that is the essence of how a tribe functions. A tribe does not function based upon, the elected officials that say that we're going to make this rule, and there's different factions, and you've got a tribe designs around survival. And what was practical, what works for the tribe. And
the survival can be social as much as it can be like physical. You can look at the concept of memes. In Japan's meme is very much you're part of a group, and if you're part of a group, you're safe. And if you're part of a group, you're supported. And if you're out of your group, well, we don't know what's going to happen to you.
That's right.
Because no one's outside of a group, or the people who are outside of a group are really outsiders. When you're studying Japanese culture, one of the standard tropes that you were taught is that Japan is designed in 3 circles. You have your inner circle, you have your outer circle, and you have other. So when you speak in Japanese, if I'm inside my family and I'm talking to my dad, well, my dad is inside my circle, but he is a senior to me, so I call him otosan. But if I'm talking to somebody in my outer circle about my dad in my inner circle, I call him chichi, or I call him something that is not honorific. And it's a question of what layer are you talking to, right? If I'm talking to somebody who's an other, say I'm in a business environment, well, I have to speak to them in very polite terms. And then I have to understand, at what level are they? Are they my customer, which means they're higher than me? Are they a vendor, which means they're maybe equal or lower? I mean, there is a very structured sense of communication in Japanese. And it comes back to that sense of, what group are you part of? And when you talk about tribes, you have a nation of tribes. I have a tribe inside of that tribe. I have a clan inside of that tribe, and I have a family inside of that clan. So my clan may talk to another clan, and they are another. But when I'm talking to another tribe inside of the nation, we're a whole tribe. And I speak to them, and I work with them, and I don't steal from them, and I support them in that way.
That's interesting.
And it's, to my knowledge, it's one of the most unique social experiments. An experiment's been running for thousands of years that I've seen. I've done business in India, I've done business in China, I've done business in Europe. I haven't done any business in Africa, but the one thing I see here is that insular nature of being Japanese is a comfort for Japanese people. In a good way. This is not a criticism. This is a strength of Japan. They always talk about back in the 1980s with Japan Inc. that Japan had this ability to build these 5-year plans. And they would line everybody up, and they say, this is the direction we're going in, and then they just steamroll forward, right? And that was part of the tribe, because the tribe would get together and say, our goal as a tribe is to go this direction. And they would spend literally years building consensus to make sure that everybody's needs were met and that everybody would go in the same direction, and then they would say, okay, go, and everybody would go that way.
That's pretty much why they got involved in World War II.
Yeah.
The same thing. But also very much the reason why they closed down for over 200 years.
Yeah.
They tried to say, we have to take care of our dirty laundry inside here and make sure, because all of us aren't clear about what this tribe is all about.
It's an interesting way to put it. I mean, historians will talk about the fact that Ieyasu, who was the shogun at the time, you know, he had just gone through a bloody conflict and had finally been able to consolidate the country. And his goal basically was he didn't want any foreigners coming in and messing with him trying to organize.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, but it's a different way to look at it, right? It's the
but
tribe's basically saying, okay, you know, we want to work on the tribe.
Right.
We're just going to keep everybody else out while we work on our internal stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they did. But they had to still get some information. And that's why they allowed a few people to come through from Northern Europe to come down and give them stuff. But no religion, nothing like that.
Well, yeah,
just give us.
It was
you know,
in a sense, it was kind of similar to what the Chinese tried to do as they were, you know, trying to open up special economic zones in the last, you know, several decades. They're like, come in and do business with us. We love that. Just don't talk to us about politics, religion, or anything that's controversial, because then we will kick you out.
Right. And make sure that we're a part of whatever you decide to do.
Yeah.
You cannot do this on your own. You're not autonomous from us.
Yeah. And I think the toughest thing is that European Western nations for hundreds of years have been able to really just stride the world and do whatever they want, and no one really was able to say no to them. There's a couple of countries that did. Thailand did it. Japan did it. And China is doing it right now.
Right.
You know, and China, of course, being a much bigger, you can call it a threat competitor in the sense that they now have the economic power where they really are independent and autonomous from the needs of having the West, you know, take care of them or you know, guide them or whatever. I mean, it's a very unique place that we're in right now.
That's true.
You know, Japan is kind of sitting in a very unique position within that.
Yeah, I thought that when I was part of the chamber. Let's get back to you.
Okay.
When you finished, what made you come over here for business? How did you end up getting over here for business?
Well, so, you know, I did what everybody does when they come over right after college. I came over and I taught English. Right? And I did that for a couple of years. And
what year was this that you came?
93 to 97.
93, okay.
Yeah.
But why did you do that when you had this Japanese background? You could speak Japanese by that time, right?
I graduated with a degree in Japanese, and my Japanese was atrocious.
Okay, because you really didn't have anyone to speak with. You didn't get involved with the community there.
Well, I mean, at UC Davis, it's a farm community. I have more chance to meet with cows than I do Japanese people.
Right. But your teacher was Japanese.
All my teachers were Japanese or fluent Japanese speakers, and I had all the fundamentals.
Right, but you did not have
But it took me about 6 months of being in Japan and being immersed in Japan, in Japanese language.
You stayed away from foreigners?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I was teaching English at an English school, so there were foreigners who were there. But I was very fortunate. The school that I ended up joining, they actively encouraged me to improve my Japanese because they had classes from elementary school kids to senior citizens, and they would teach the elementary school kids grammar in Japanese about English. And, you know, this is before they ever took it in school. And it was a very unique school. Small school run by a couple. The wife was an American who had a master's degree in speech pathology.
This is in Tokyo?
This is in Yokohama.
In Yokohama,
yeah. A school named Joyce and Watt Eikaiwa. And to this day, I see that they have probably one of the more unique models in that
they still exist.
I'm pretty sure that, you know, I mean, they've been around they were around for quite a while then. You know, I know that, you know, both of them, you know, are getting older. I don't know if they've thought about retirement yet, but I looked at their website the other day and it's still up there and they're still running, so it looks like it. I haven't been in touch with them in recent years. I should get back in touch with them, actually. But the point I was making was that I was very fortunate that they encouraged me in my Japanese. So within about 6 months after kind of being in that community and really having Japanese be the core language that I was hearing all the time, my ears started getting accustomed. And I started really connecting all the dots of all the things that I had learned, the vocabulary and the grammar and everything that I had been learning for so many years. And it really was in the months after that that my speaking just really took off. And after about a year, I met on coincidence on a train with one of my former classmates. And I was with one of my Japanese friends, and we were conversing in Japanese. And he's like, "Is that you, Eric?" I says, "How'd your Japanese get so good?" And I hadn't
thought about it
at all.
You were in it. You were too immersed in it.
I was so immersed in it.
Right.
But it was at that point that I realized, okay, well, it was that, but it was like, okay, I've started. Because my goal had been to get and dig deeper into what Japanese was and what the culture was and what the language was. And it's impossible to do that if you're doing it in English and trying to do it in Japan.
Right. Okay.
And so after that, then it was when I could, really start to get to know people in my community and be able to go to different historical locations. I live 15 minutes from Kamakura.
Okay.
And so I could go down to Kamakura and I could go and see, different temples, and I could go and be able to learn about, different histories around that, understand what Kamakura meant to Japan. Really still from an outsider's perspective, but it was so much fun.
Do you have any intention of ever going back to the States?
Not right now.
There's a time in the future possible.
I've been here, except for the 7 years that I was back in the States between my first trip and when I came out with Apple. I've been in Asia the entire time. So more than half of my life, I've been in Asia. I spent 3 years in Hong Kong from 2013 to 2016 running my company there.
What company was that?
So after I left Apple, I started a company that was...
but I knew you finished English class, then you said after you finished Apple, what happened after the English classes?
So taught English for about 3-4 years. Woke up one day and said, I'm not an English teacher. That's not what I want to do in my life. I came here to learn Japanese and culture, and I've gotten to a point where I think I'm going to hit a plateau. And that day I went into the school and I said, I'm going to be going back to the U.S. in 6 months. I wanted to give them time to be able to find a new teacher and all of that, and close up my stuff. And so I did that. Moved back to the States and ended up working for a Japanese tech company. And they hired me because I had a long-standing relationship and love of Apple, and Apple was the client that they were working with.
Okay.
Helped them launch a bunch of product and get their business relationship with Apple doing really well. And then Apple called me and says, "Hey, we really like you. You want to come over and work for us?" And so I went to work for Apple.
How long had that been?
About a year and a half.
A year, and then Apple picked you up.
Yeah.
And you stayed with Apple for how long?
I was with Apple for 9 years.
So right after they picked you up, how long did it take before they sent you to?
4 years. So I was in the U.S. At headquarters in Cupertino, Infinite Loop, the main building, for about 4 years, working in marketing and market development.
Okay.
On the product side, and then there was an opportunity in Japan. They were looking for somebody to help develop a new piece of business. And they were struggling with that. One of my friends said, "Hey, Eric, you used to live in Japan. You speak Japanese pretty well. Do you think you'd be interested?" So I went and talked to the team. It was a very interesting opportunity. And, we talked a little bit about what we could do there. And they ended up sending me out for what was supposed to be a 2-year assignment. 5 years later, I'm running all of Asia Pacific instead of just Japan. And I've gone from this one specific product to basically being the regional product manager for all of the pro apps.
But you were in Japan then?
In Asia, yeah. I was based in Japan, but I traveled all over. I worked in India and Australia.
Hong Kong? Didn't you say something about Hong Kong?
I got ahead of myself there.
You sure did.
So
okay.
the simple order to look at is
right.
I came here with Apple.
Right.
2009, Apple asked me to move back to the States. And with that move, I was going to be, there was an organizational change. Okay. And so my position that I was going to have was going to change significantly.
Lower or higher?
It really wasn't a lower or higher question. It was a lateral move, and it was, I was moving into a group where I had great opportunities for progress. Okay. But my Japanese skills, my Asia connections, all of that would become basically not completely unimportant, but significantly less important. Mm-hmm. And I had spent 5 years building a great network and knowing a lot about how to do business and how to build product and deliver product into the Asia market. And so I was looking around to see if there was any other opportunities to stay in Asia. And a partner company that I had worked with when I was at Apple approached me and said, hey, look, would you be willing to represent our company throughout Asia Pacific? And I said, yeah, so what, you want to hire me? And they said, no, we're a very technology-focused company in California. We don't really know how to manage and run a multinational business. Set up a company. We'll contract your company. And that's how we'll keep the relationship. So I did that.
And that worked for how long?
9 years.
9 years. That must have been wonderful.
Yeah. So, that was, 7 years.
7 years. Okay.
And, I ended up, I created a company called Pacific Portals, which was management and consulting, and go-to-market and product advisement for tech companies trying to work in Asia.
So you didn't deal with that company. You picked up some other clients.
They were my primary client for most of the time. We had other small companies that came in to do consultations. We did some work with some other ones, but they were the main company that we worked with. And they were a sizable company. And they were a great company to work with. So it made it really easy. But I started in Japan, but I knew that the company wasn't going to be Japan focused. It was Asia focused, and I wanted to have my corporate entity someplace that was as flexible as possible. So I started my company in Hong Kong and created a subsidiary in Japan. And then I eventually had staff in Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and India. When we had about 9 people at the largest for the company.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so we ran that for about 7 years, and then after that, I was winding that down, and a friend of mine's company was based in China, and he was trying to go global. And he's like, "Hey, Eric, would you come help me with this?" And we originally looked at it as, well, maybe it could be a consulting gig for Pacific Portals. But what he really needed was he needed a team inside. And myself and some of my team, because we were scaling down one piece of the business, we said, well, why don't we just go in-house and we'll just manage the company and help them grow. So I took on the position of COO. My lead guy took on the position of head of marketing, and we came into the company and helped them expand out to a Hong Kong office and Japan office, and did all of that for them, and then helped.
What year was that? What year
that was
that?
2016.
2016. Oh, so that was okay.
Yeah, so I did that for about 3 years,
And
and end of 2016 till the end of 2019. And then after that, I ended up at the company. I came back to the company that I'm at right now, called 1010. And
you'd been with 1010 before?
So I founded 1010 with a couple of friends here in Japan in 2013.
So it's your company.
And then I stepped away.
How long were you with them when you founded it?
Well, about 2 years.
Okay.
And I was doing both. I was running Pacific Portals and I was running 1010 at the same time.
What does 1010 do?
1010's a IoT company. So we do Internet of Things for unattended retail. So any place where you have a point of sale, but there's no salesperson there. Vending machines, coin laundry, coin parking, anything where you've got a machine that you're working with and you put money in it and you get a service or you get some type of product. Hardest thing there is, how do you actually develop a relationship to compete against another point of sale, like a convenience store or a supermarket or whatever? And how do you know who those customers are? You can't. How can you tell who they are? Well, 1010 is a simple app that is a mobile wallet with a loyalty card built into it. You go to an Asahi vending machine. There's 10,000 of them all over Japan right now. And you click on your 1010 app and you get stamps. You buy 15 drinks, you get a free drink. Sometimes they'll do constant campaigns where you can have double stamps. They do sampling campaigns where they say, hey, try this new coffee drink. Here's a free drink for you.
1010. But didn't someone else, that's just like these other cards, like the Nanako card. And
so you look at like a Nanako, or you look at, these guys are looking at it from the perspective of, work just in my shop. I'm a Lawson card.
Right, okay.
This is the only place you could use it.
Right.
And if it's not a Lawson. Yeah, so
but Nanako can be used.
So Nanako is just a payments card, like a Suica or like a Passmo.
But it says 7-Eleven. I thought it was 7-Eleven. Okay, 7-Eleven must own it.
They connect with each other.
Okay.
So 7-Eleven will have points.
Mm-hmm.
Nanaco is a payment mark.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right? And what we've done is we just simply integrate everything into an app. It's multi-tenant, which means that as more brands come on the app, you don't need to have a 7-Eleven app and Family Mart app and a Coke and a Saki app. It's all one app. When you're inside of 7-Eleven, it's a 7-Eleven app. When you're in front of an Asahi vending machine,
you can actually use it there?
Yeah. So right now we work with Asahi, I said about 10,000 different locations in Japan. As we expand out and it's primarily, I said, unattended retail. So less a 7-Eleven, more what Family Mart's doing right now, where like Family Mart is trying to have a vending machine outside of the Family Mart if they're
so you get whatever you want.
So you can just buy it directly there, right? So how do you build loyalty? How do you build a connection with the customer? And we do a lot around the marketing side, so marketing campaigns for our clients. And then we do data analytics, of course. There's a huge amount of data there to be able to get you a better understanding of who your customer is. Things like that.
Wow. Yeah. So do you also deal with images too? Like, for example, do you get the footage of people, like when they come into the store or come to the thing?
No.
Because I know the parking things, they actually have cameras.
Yes.
So I was wondering, that can see more than just the license plate.
Right. Well, it's a question of how you want to use it. So normally, you're going to do that only when there's a value in being able to access and process that information.
Okay.
For a parking lot, my guess is, and we haven't talked to any of the parking guys about their cameras yet, my guess is that they're focused primarily just on that license plate.
They sure are, to find out if you pay or not. Because if they don't have the little thing that comes up and it's just that tight, you can take off.
And their goal there really is
recover their payment.
Yeah, it's revenue protection.
That's all it is.
Right. If there was a reason that they could be able to say, hey, we know this is Lance Lee. You are a Kain. You are a member of ours with a Wadibiki of this and this and this with a discount, and you don't have to show your card, then that might be a nice way for them to do it. But the cost for them to be able to implement a system like that is probably more than the benefit for them. Right?
So what do you see this? You're in that field, so you're back with Tintin now.
Yeah. So I came back in 2020.
2020, okay.
So beginning of last year, and I've been there now for so it's almost 2 years now.
What's your position there?
So I just was appointed as the representative director of the company.
Because you helped form it. What about the other? How many partners were you involved with?
So there was 3 other people who were originally involved with it. One of them unfortunately passed away last year.
Oh, sorry.
And then the 2 others are no longer really involved with the day-to-day operations of the company. As startups happen, people peel away.
So it's just you.
So it's just me. We've got great investor partners, and we've got a great team there. So it's not me just sitting there saying, hey, my product. No, it's definitely not that. Okay. We have a good team of people.
So you see this expanding and moving into the new areas, obviously.
Yeah,
so you have ideas out there.
We've focused, like I said, on the concept of developing loyalty in unattended retail, and all of the data and all of the marketing potential that's around that. There's a cashless piece to it, but we're not trying to create a new cashless model. There's lots of different solutions for doing mobile cashless already. So, we look at being able to bring those in and have those be usable on the platform. But the thing that a PayPay or a Line Pay doesn't do for you is it doesn't give you as a shop owner really actionable information about who's my customer? What are they like? What are they not like? How do I reach them? How do I influence them? How do I give them incentives and create a deeper relationship with them so that they'll choose me over a competitor's product? And that's what we do.
So how would people get in contact with Tintin? How do you get it?
So you can go to, of course, our website, which is mytintin.com.
Which is going to be put on this podcast on the bottom, underneath the description.
Thank you.
Do you have one of the cards now?
I don't have a business card with me.
No, one of the Tintin cards.
So it's not a card, it's an app.
Oh, you put it on your phone?
Yeah, so it's just a little app. So you go on your phone.
You can go in the App Store and get it.
And yeah, you can just go down, and if you look on the App Store, you'll be able to just look for 1010, and you get this nice little app here. So this one here is set up as our default for the Asahi brand. So I've currently bought 11 drinks. If I get to 15, I end up getting a free coupon for a free drink.
Show us the front. What's the front of the app? The beginning.
So this is
So maybe you want to. This is it. No, because we're gonna most definitely. We're gonna put that up there. That's I love tech, and I love.
So the great thing, what we've done, what we did with Asahi recently is you can go into our news feed and be able to pull up a map, and the map will know your location, and then you can be able to simply say, hey, I'd like to know where's the closest vending machine that has tent in it.
So you can get Google Maps immediately.
Yeah.
And
So I've got a map here that tells me, we're here.
Right.
There's 2 machines down there. There's 1 over here. There's 2 over here. You got some over here. I mean, they're all over the place. If you zoom out even farther, you can see we've got machines, supported machines all over Tokyo.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But are you only in Tokyo right now?
If you look here, you can see we are in.
Oh, you're gonna do the whole map of Japan.
So we are. I think I can do it this way here. Yeah. So we are in. If you look here, we are in Tokyo, in Nagoya area, and in the Kinki area.
Kinki area, okay.
Yeah, so Kansai, Nagoya, and the
and eventually, so maybe 2 years or 3 years from now, it should be from Wakkanai all the way down to Okinawa.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I hear you.
Oh, yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
That's your future plan. How much longer do you think you'll be with Tim Tim?
I'm not sure. It's a very interesting business. But you need to make sure that the different phases that you are with development of a company, that you have the right people there. Right now, I think that I'm necessary to make sure that things move forward. But if things change, of course, I'm interested in the company succeeding as much as me succeeding.
Right.
And I do see the company's success as my success. So I'll be there as long as I'm necessary.
What would you like to leave us with in this beautiful podcast? You got the thing I have to say is this has been unusual for me, this podcast, because I love Japan so much. And when you talked about it, it wasn't about you, but I wanted to hear it. And I think as much as the people that will watch this podcast will, because I just knew by the way that you're speaking that you had a real depth as a foreigner of what Japan's about, and I wanted to hear that.
I think people. You asked me, why did I come to Japan?
Yeah,
I came to Japan because this is a culture that I think most foreigners, when they come here, they learn something from it. Whether they appreciate it or whether it's something that they actually agree with or not, there's a huge amount of culture here in history that gives us a new perspective on the rest of the world. I looked at the world differently after I moved to Japan. After living in the U.S. and kind of the insular bubble of the U.S. perspective on things, and then moving to Japan, it gave me a more mature, a better understanding of what other viewpoints.
When do you think that changed for you? How long were you here before that started to change?
I think it was pretty immediate because when you get out of that messaging that is kind of an internal self-feeding solution inside of U.S. news and just daily commentary. I came here receptive and looking to understand different culture and try and be able to, bring that into my experience. So I think that I was very conducive and I wanted to learn. There are people who've been here for 20 years that still speak no Japanese, that, are long-term, Japanese residents that will never really be in Japan.
Well, they're taking comfort in being other.
Yeah.
And the Japanese treat other, if you are an expat particularly, very well.
Yeah. And I was going to say, and there's not a lot of downside other than missing out on those cultural pieces. One of my good friends, she was in Kyoto. After she'd been living in Japan for I think 15 years or so. And she was walked by a shop and said, "Oh, there's this really cute thing inside. I'd like to go buy it." And she went in, and the woman there was this, kind of, older woman, kind of, hunched over, Japanese woman. She saw this foreign woman walk in and immediately say, eigo dame, eigo dame. So my friend spoke to her in perfect Japanese. She says, oh, that's okay. I do speak Japanese. It's okay. She says, no, gomenasai. I'm sorry. Eigo dame. And she was, she had this experience of, even though she spoke Japanese and she understood the culture, there still were certain people that, she wasn't able to.
Cannot hear it.
Right?
Cannot hear it.
By and large, the moment you open your mouth and speak Japanese in Japan, it opens up an entirely new world to you. People will let you into their homes, they will let you into their environments, they'll let you into their life experiences because they want to share.
That's true.
Right? And I think that many of the foreigners who are here, there are people who come here probably for different reasons. People who come here to meet a business goal over a period of years and then are going to leave. Unless they, really are someone who wants to immerse themselves in a culture, they most likely will just skim the surface. They'll go and see the sights, and then they'll go back to their lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. I came here for a very different reason. I came here because I was fascinated by that dichotomy of a culture that was very monolithic. We are Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of, you can say, well, some came from Korea and some came from
the
Southeast Asia.
Right.
These are people who are homogeneously Japanese that can go back hundreds or even over 1,000 years of documented history to say, this is my lineage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yet, I come from a culture where, in my high school, we probably had 30 different nationalities, and we probably had 10 different languages being spoken by, kids that I knew in class. And it was just kind of, it was the salad bowl, of everything. And I love that difference. I've always loved these significant differences in seeing, what that means in culture and how that changes the way you look at the world.
Well, you couldn't end with anything better than that. I want to thank you, Aaron.
My pleasure.
Taking the time to come here. I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast. Make sure that you press like. By all means, subscribe, and subscribe one more time. Remember, never forget, it's all on loan. Continue to reach for the stars, and you're too blessed to be stressed.